Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is here. And no, we're not going to be spoiling any of the plot in this video, but something did pick up my interest on a regular screen, something that looked a little bit like this. Let's talk about it, shall we? Hello and welcome back to Cinema 101, the last word on the exhibition side of the industry, aiming to simplify and explain the burning matters in our mission to bring cinema closer. And, well, it's quite a boring topic in all fairness for our first one of these in literal years, aspect ratios. It all stems from arguably one of the biggest films of the year opening on Wednesday as we film this. Guardians of the Galaxy 3 opened on Wednesday. It stormed to a strong $114 million opening weekend over in the States. $282 million globally. But there is a story that's been developing since the film came out. One of the most clickbaited articles that have been going around on Twitter since the film came out is the number of versions, the sheer number of versions of this film that have been sent to cinemas. Vulture are claiming that it's upwards of 600. This is allegedly due to Disney wanting cinemas to, and I quote, maximise their screen size for the audience to ensure that wherever you go to see it, you're going to see the best version. A lot of this 600 version thing are your usual foreign language dubs, but two particular versions of the film have been, let's say, confusing cinema management teams since they got their digital cinema packages through late last week. So cinemas have been sent two copies of the film. One version is your conventional scope 2:3:9:1 aspect ratio version with a letterbox, the black bars above and below the image, as you'd usually get pretty much every Marvel film that's played in cinemas, both 2D and 3D versions. But cinemas have also received a second copy of the film too. Same plot, same everything, same film, but 45 minutes of it are presented in the much wider 1:8:5:1 aspect ratio. Flat, good old widescreen like the ads and the trailers. They have given regular sites, as well as the Dolby cinema screens. Dolby are playing this version as well. They've given their own budget version of the IMAX experience. Which reminds me, James Gunn actually shot the entire thing on IMAX in 1:9:1 as he usually does. So even this variable aspect ratio print isn't the best version. Disney's VP of finishing, if that's even a thing, Evan Jacobs, has come out and said that this is definitely the most complex delivery that Marvel has ever done for a film. It's the biggest rollout as well, like rolling out 600 versions is light work compared to something that James Cameron did on Avatar, as the fine folks over on the Film Tech forums have pointed out. This is taking a page straight from James Cameron's playbook. He created 1,065 different versions of Avatar: The Way of Water, including combinations for 3D, HDR, 4K, different light levels for 3D, aspect ratios, high frame rates, local languages, and of course Dolby Bloody Atmos. Oh yeah, and a partridge in a pear tree for good measure. But this is the thing that gets me with this whole aspect ratio thing. Customers to these regular, boring 2D screenings aren't being told about these creative choices. Especially if you've got the flat 1:8:5 version playing on a scope screen, we have 45 minutes of the film that played in flat, but the rest of the film just floating in the middle of the screen with black bars on the sides and above. I can get why he's made a decision like this. It's a creative decision made solely by the film's crew, and don't get me wrong, those 45 minutes got presented in 1:8:5. Tonally within the film, they are some of the biggest and best action set pieces, telling some of the key plot points in terms of one particular character's backstory. Again, we don't want to go into too much detail about the plot because it's still opening weekend in some territories, and we don't want to spoil too much about a very emotionally charged Marvel Cinematic Universe movie, a very dark MCU movie at that. But this whole aspect ratio situation, it reminds me a lot of that time that Stanley Kubrick sent out letters to projectionists ahead of the release of Barry Lyndon, where he literally asks the projection team at cinemas to do their job. The film is in your hands. You are the last bastion of presenting this film as the director intended and satisfying all of the creative choices, like playing it at the right sound level, playing it at the right volume, ensuring that intervals were appropriate there. Michael Bay did the same with his third Transformers film, with the premium light level version for 3D. Hell, even David Lynch for Mulholland Drive, and that's one that's going to pop some of our viewers. They know who they are. Just the smallest details that are neglected in the projection room can either make or break the presentation or experience of a film. And the reason I mention this is because some sites, regardless of whether they've got flat or scope, have just opted to play the film in flat. And realise that, oh yeah, we've just got one version of the film, we've not had the keys sent for scope, we'll just play it in flat on all of our screens because that's the version that the studio wants us to play. And that's not the logic that the big screen experience was built upon. Obviously, there are hundreds of reasons as to why each site would take their own individual choices to which version of the film, whether they play it in flat or play it in scope. We'd be here for hours. I know some of the most common reasons is because they didn't want to program the extra attributes that would be needed to put a scope version specifically on a scope screen when you have countless other screens that are set up exclusively for flat, that have the screen set up for flat permanently, they don't have the masking, they don't have any of the automation that would be needed. But from a pure critical standpoint, we need to be paying attention to these things. Cinema is a premium out-of-home experience these days. And if we want to keep this experience on the island of relevancy, to borrow something from the WWE stuff I've been watching lately, if we want to keep cinema on the island of relevancy in this age where Netflix is eroding at our little beach that is the big screen experience, and we have streaming services luring people to stay at home, wait a couple of weeks and watch the films without the distraction, we need to be getting the presentation of these films spot on, first time, every time. Some places do pay attention to these things. I got a heads up about this little issue just before I went in to watch Guardians of the Galaxy on Thursday. Management at the local cinema, God bless them, came out and said, well, we need to have a word with you, Jack. We know you've booked in the scope screen expecting scope. We're actually going to be playing it in flat, but if you want to, we'll swap you into one of the flat screenings just so you don't get too angry. And fair play to the management team at that place. But they know about these things. They offered me to swap me into screen 3 to watch it. I said, I refuse. I refuse to swap into another screen because this is legitimate what I said to them. I was like, look, I'm probably going to end up making an episode of Cinema 101 about this because this is a topic that we need to be educating more customers, more CAs, more staff about. When we are working in cinema, we need to be getting the basics right. We need to be getting aspect ratios right. Film was played at the right volume level, which I can understand, I can get behind. But if we want to keep people coming back to cinema, especially after the year that we've had, in terms of like the recovery, we need to be hitting the basics on pretty much every front. We're getting there, slowly but surely. But I think we just need to take a step back for a minute, look at the bigger picture and realise this is what the big screen experience is about. We need to go back to our good old showmanship days, because that's really when it did mean something. And speaking of the year that we have just had, it's very apt that we're filming this Cinema 101 now, because there is a brand new episode of The Journal coming up, looking back at how the industry has done in general over the last 12 months. We covered the films in 2022 Wipe, now it's time to look at the statistics behind the success. In our yearly State of Play, that will be coming onto this YouTube channel on May the 17th, which is 2 years since cinemas reopened following the good old COVID lockdown. But have you guys seen Guardians of the Galaxy yet? Have you seen the varial aspect print? Let us know in the comments, because we want to sort of see how you guys have reacted to this kind of development. It's not often that we get a film that tests projection staff as much as this. So let's see whether cinemas are actually paying attention to this level of detail. As nerdy as it might be, this really is where cinema can live or die. That is it for this little episode of Cinema 101. We've got no idea when the next episode will be because this is our little reactive series. But we'll be back next week for the return at long last of the journal as we break down the statistics behind this success. If you're in England, enjoy the rest of the Coronation Bank Holiday week, and we'll be back here in a couple of days' time. Take care, and we'll see you soon.